How will the Red Sox and Pirates fare versus each other over the next 3 days? With Ethan Smith from Locked On Pirates. All right.
Yeah, messing with the music today. You guys don't get the Locked On Red Sox music or the Pirates music because it's a Locked On crossover, baby. How are we going to do it at the same time? I'd have to send him the file. He would have to send me a file. We'd have to go into a huge editing process. Let's just talk baseball, Jake.
That's all that
That's what the
matters.
people are here for.
That's what the people are here for. But Ethan, to start off, how you feeling about your Pirates going into the 2023 season?
Well, the optimism train kind of took a hit this weekend. I know that it's just the first 3 games, but losing a series to the Cincinnati Reds to kick off your season is not exactly the optimism juice that you want. It's not really something that you really want as a Pirates fan. But again, there's 159 more games to go, people. There's still a lot of time to go. If you tuned in to Locked On Pirates and heard my conversation with Gary Morgan this morning, because I have this version of this episode coming up this afternoon, you would hear I said the same thing. Don't overreact to anything you saw in the first series. Honestly, with this series too, both of these teams, the Red Sox and the Pirates, are still getting their feet under themselves. They're still trying to figure things out. A lot of these guys are still getting that World Baseball Classic hangover out of the way and that jet lag out of the way. So there's still a lot of time to figure it out, but there's some real optimism around this team. And by optimism, for Red Sox fans, optimism would be we're hoisting a World Series at the end of the year optimism. For the Pirates, it's hey, let's improve from losing 100 games the last 2 years and get to like 74 and 88, which was my prediction. That's more of the optimism we're looking for, just with some of the young players they're going to have coming up in the next couple of months that we're going to see. Some of the young players that are already here, like O'Neill Cruz, Ke'Bryan Hayes, among that group that are all already here that are going to really change things. There's a lot to like, and it feels like they're for once actually fielding a legitimate major league product for once, rather than what we've seen for the last 3 or 4 years. But I mean, it's so early that it's very hard to set expectations yet for what this team has in store.
And I bet for you as well, as a Pirates fan, just Pirates Nation in general, it's a lot of looking at the Orioles' success over the last year or so and seeing their prospects finally being able to flourish, and sort of praying that Ben Cherington, obviously former Red Sox general manager, is able to sort of work the magic like Mike Elias has been able to do in Baltimore and find a way to help these prospects flourish. It's great to get the number one pick, or at least the top 3 or 5 over a 4-year span. But as we saw with Mark Appel with the Astros over 10 years ago, those number one picks don't always work out. And so I bet as Pirates fans, you look at the Orioles, and that's sort of the threshold that you want to see over the next year or so. But it's just a overall progression year in and year out of maybe we'll lose, 80 to 90 games, but as long as there's some sort of development in the system, I bet as Pirates fans, you guys are happy.
Yes, and some of that development in the system is going to pay off eventually. And I know that the Red Sox and the Pirates, it might not be like the Red Sox of old that we're used to, that I'm especially used to being 24 years old, where I was watching Ortiz, Pedroia, and all these Hanley Ramirez. Well, all the names that Red Sox fans know. I don't need to tell you guys all the names that you guys know already, but there's different levels to kind of the optimism factor of looking at prospects. Like for the Red Sox in general, there are some prospects that I know that you guys like Tristan Casas, Masataka Yoshida. You can consider him
Right.
a prospect in some retrospect because this is his first year at the major league level. Yes, he played in Japan, which is a very good league, but that transition can kill guys sometimes. We've seen that in the past. And out from an outside perspective, Rafael Devers, one of my favorite players in baseball, honestly. And also, I play a lot of MLB 23 the show, and I always have him because he has a really cool batting stance. But for the Pirates, man, a lot of these prospects that I've been talking about since I've joined this network, like O'Neill Cruz, like Ke'Bryan Hayes, are all finally getting to that point now where they're going to be MLB players every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're expecting from this next crop of Luis Ortiz, Endy Rodriguez, Henry Davis, Mike Burrows, Quinn Priester, even farther down the line, Termar Johnson. I mean, you have Pirates fans already wanting Dylan Cruz from LSU to be in a Pirates uniform already, and the draft isn't for another 3 months. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys to like. But again, prospects, it's like throwing darts at the bar with your buddies, dude. You don't really know where the dart's going after 3 or 4 beers, but eventually you're hoping you're going to hit a bullseye on one of them. And that's
Right.
the one thing that I urge a lot of people, and I think Lindsey Crosby at Locked On Prospects would say this too. And this is for Red Sox fans, for you guys looking at your prospect value as well. If you look at your top 30 prospects on MLB.com, Fangraphs, wherever you want to use it, and 4 of those guys end up being everyday major league players for you, that is a win. And I think that's what the Pirates are trying to get to right now, with a good mix of veteran value from guys like Carlos Santana, G-Man Choi, Rich Hill, Vince Velasquez, to also then going to the lower value of it with these guys that are young, like a G1 Bay, like a Rodolfo Castro, a Jack Sawinski, eventually a Travis Swaggerty, Kanan Smith-Njigba. I mean, the names go on and on and on for the
Hmm.
Pirates on guys that we're going to have to get looks at. And I think the Red Sox it's a good matchup for the Pirates to look at. So after your opening series, by the way, I was going to give a takeaway on this already for the series. It seems like all the Pirates have to do is score more than 9 runs to beat you guys, because that's apparently the benchmark to beat the Red Sox this year, because you guys scored 9 runs in your first 3 games. So, I mean, where are you guys sitting in terms of your expectations this year with that AL East? I mean, I have to know, because the AL East is a cluster, you know what.
And I think with sort of the landscape of the AL East right now, it isn't as daunting as it might have been maybe 3 or 4 months ago. Obviously, when you see all the injuries come up with the Yankees and their pitching staff and lineup as well, and I think the question marks for how are the Orioles ultimately going to bounce off of sort of their surprising season last year. The Blue Jays, are they going to finally flourish and turn into a dominant sort of force that most people expect them to be? And then, the Rays, will they maybe take a little bit of a step back with some injury problems and some guys leaving over this past offseason? And I think for the Red Sox right now, one thing for, fans to take immediately from the last 3 games of the season to start it is this team's never out of it. And, you even saw it on opening day. I was there. It was blistering cold, but to see, Corey Kluber allow 6 earned runs right out of the gate, and the Sox were down like 8-3 halfway through the game, and then they find a way to make it 10-9 during the ninth inning, and then when you see 2 days ago Adam Duvall walk-off home run, and the only reason why they were even able to get Duvall up is Ryan McKenna dropped a ball in the lights, and they're just getting really lucky, and the offense is taking advantage of all the opportunities possible. They're getting bloop hits left and right, finding ways to show off that power, which was something that a lot of fans were really worried about during this offseason, looking at this lineup prior to the season starting. But the one thing I think that the Red Sox and the Pirates have very similarly is sort of uh, their Achilles heel is their pitching. I feel like for the Red Sox, the bullpen, it's obviously much better than it was last year, but we're already starting to see, the frontline starters and, Corey Kluber and Chris Sale really struggling to start off the season. It was nice to see Tanner Houck sort of bounce back after a really rough showing during spring training. But, I think at least on the pitching side, it's more competitive than obviously the offensive side. And when you look at the Pirates and the Red Sox, just as somebody who, whether you're a casual baseball fan or somebody who knows the game, you don't see these teams as very similar teams. But I think that this could be a lot more competitive than most people expect.
Yeah, and also these opening series and opening week is always just weird. I mean, if you just go down the opening weekend, I mean, the Phillies have put up 2 double-digit run games against the Rangers at the time of recording. They obviously played on national TV last night when you're listening to this, so we don't know the result of that yet. Colorado won the series against San Diego. Shocker. The Rockies own the Padres for whatever reason. There was just a lot of different stuff that happened this weekend all around baseball. And I think ultimately the whole opening week is just weird. It's just there's so many things that happen. Fenway Park, by the way, phenomenal ballpark. Never been to it. But also, when you watch games be played there on television, you could tell it's a unique ballpark to play in, especially for a team like the Pirates that does not get to go there that often. But now with the balanced schedule, they're going to get to go there very often. And it's going to be interesting to see how these teams do. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about the matchups that we're going to see, especially the pitching matchups that we're going to see, which you did call the weakness of these two teams. But, Jake, we all try to be general managers in our own right.
We
We all
try.
try to make the decisions for our favorite teams. And guess what? You can actually do that at Ultimate Pro Baseball GM if you really, really, really want to. And Pro Baseball GM is the coolest game I've played in a long time because I've always thought I could be a great Major League GM, and it turns out I'm not. It's not that great. If you've had the same thought and have fantasized about managing your own franchise, go and download Pro Baseball GM immediately. The game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of a franchise, playing through seasons and leading your franchise and fans to glory as you build a historic dynasty. In the simulation, you're responsible for everything that goes on, including hiring and the right coaches and staff, managing team finances, scouting and drafting players, managing through tough and difficult personalities and injuries, and navigating your franchise through free agency, which I do not recommend at all, and all the ups and downs of a season. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline, on the go, as you want and when you want to. By the way, stacking up against the other Locked On host, I'm not stacking up that great, but I would say I'm in the top half. I'm not in the bottom half. I am in the top half. Locked On Pirates and Red Sox listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today.
And I think
Yeah,
the biggest thing that you brought up with the stadium of Fenway Park is something that guys who just signed with the team like Adam Duvall and even Yoshida are starting to figure out. That wall can find a way to turn just you know a fly ball that would be out in 29 other ballparks and turn it into a double or a home run. And I feel like for a team like the Pirates, who, as you said, like don't play at that ballpark really at all, in last few years or so, and especially with the team that they have right now, they probably have barely any experience at that ballpark. I think that that's one thing to really look at is how will that lineup really take advantage of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're looking at a team that over the course of the Red Series we saw this weekend, there was a lot of pushing the ball down that right field line and utilizing the speed that the Pirates have. The Pirates have some speed. They got O'Neill Cruz. Andrew McCutchen, albeit not as fast as he used to be, he still got some speed, man. And I could really see him making an impact on this series using, as what you said, the experience factor. And even McCutchen probably hasn't been in Fenway Park that much either outside of his time with the Yankees.
Right.
But on top of that, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can utilize Fenway Park to your advantage, especially as a visitor. But obviously, the Red Sox are going to have the up advantage on that. Even if the guys are new, they've already seen it more than the Pirates have seen it. And again, utilize the corners of this ballpark. That's what I always say. The corners of this ballpark can give you fits at defensively, but they can be your best friend offensively. And when you're looking at the Pirates, you see O'Neill Cruz, left-handed power hitter. He's going to want to take it to right field on that short wall. You look at Brian Reynolds. He's a switch hitter who can put it anywhere he wants to. And not going to get into contract stuff with Brian Reynolds. Thank you for finally being the first person not asking me that right off of rip on a crossover. But then you have Carlos Santana, another switch hitter who can put it everywhere. Ke'Bryan Hayes, contact righty. All it takes for him is to get a little bit of air under that ball going towards the big monster. You never know what he can do with it. So there's the lineup itself could play well at Fenway. It just really depends if they can wake the bats up early. Because if they can't, like we saw very, very much so in the first series, it could spell trouble pretty quickly.
Right, and I think one thing that you brought up that is just so interesting is ways that different teams, how you brought up with Brian Reynolds, like how they try and find ways to get extensions earlier in their career, obviously we saw with Xander Bogaerts. That was one thing that was brought up to me, not even on if I did crossovers, but just out in public when I went anywhere. And I think it's always interesting to see how teams try and leverage that with young talent. And we've even seen the Red Sox try to talk about that with, Tristan Cassis and Brian Bayo. But I think, with how fans look at that, it's tough to like gain confidence and believe that player is going to stick around. And, obviously that happened with Xander. Fans didn't really want to believe that he was going to leave. He obviously ultimately did. But I feel like it ultimately hurts the rest of the team around them with that type of distraction. And we saw that last season with the Red Sox. I didn't want to. I don't want to hear your exact thoughts on the requesting the trade, but I bet as a fan of the Pirates, you look at different players and sort of try and understand and plan out what Ben Cherington might be thinking of. Are you trying to continue to offload a player to, get more prospects and stock more up the system and everything like that?
Well, and in the case of Brian Reynolds, also his agency, now that we're talking about that, his agency does use requesting a trade as a tactic of eventually getting extended. He has every want and desire to stay in Pittsburgh. We've seen new news come out about it, new news, as I call it, because it's things that have been recycled and said for the last couple of months now. But I do think the Pirates are eventually getting past that point where every acquisition they make isn't just going to be a deadline deal. You're going to see it again this year, though. Carlos Santana, 36 years old. They're going to offload him to a contender if he's playing well. Rich Hill is about to be 43.
Yeah.
I mean, Red Sox fans very familiar with Rich Hill, by the way. He had a decent outing in his Pirates debut this weekend, but he'll probably get offloaded for like scraps at the deadline as well. G-Man Choi, maybe also Vince Velasquez, maybe also. But eventually, you're going to get to the point where some of these acquisitions and some of these guys being brought up are going to be guys that are going to be on this team for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're moving past it, and I think that's why they want to get in the Reynolds extension done, is because they see Brian Reynolds as a guy that can keep their competitive window open that they are kind of placing on themselves. 2024, 2025-ish is probably when that opens. So I enjoy it. It's something that I am proud of, that the Pirates are at least getting this far. I mean, in my personal opinion, they're on the 1 yard line
Yeah.
in terms of getting this done with Brian Reynolds. We just really have to wait and see. And they don't do in season negotiation that much. So it's something that'll be very interesting to watch. But obviously, I know as Red Sox fans, you'd probably have your eyes peeled on a guy like Brian Reynolds because the Red Sox are in trade request. They're in trade talks all the time.
Interest
Guys.
kings. That's what we call them. And I think too, it's crazy how the Braves, they're able to convince their guys to negotiate during the
Yes.
season. And that's why I think really hurt the Red Sox. Since they sort of dissed Xander with a 4-year $90 million deal last spring training. That's what ultimately made him walk. And since obviously they weren't really able to negotiate too much during the season, which I get for like most guys. But I wanted to say another thing too with comparing both teams. I think with the 1-year deals and the short-term deals, the Red Sox made a few 2-year and 1-year deals with multiple guys throughout the offseason. I know you brought up the Pirates did too. I think for both teams, it's interesting to look at how this season could really determine which guys are sort of in the future and are going to be the core for the next 4 to 5 years. I think that's very similar with the Red Sox as well, because I bet fans of the Red Sox listening to this, they're like, yeah, we're in a bridge year. We accept that. The sort of benchmark is 2025 when the team is really going to be competitive. When Meyer comes up, Nick York comes up, all these different guys. I bet you brought up tons of different prospects who I bet are in your mind are ultimately going to come up when that does happen. But another thing that I want to bring up is you talked about Rich Hill, and he was such an instrumental part for Brian Bayo's development last season, just as like a mentor. And I think for all the young pitchers that the Pirates have coming up, they couldn't have had a better mentor in Rich Hill, somebody who has been at that big moments. I mean, with the Dodgers when he was really dominant, and he also had those ups and downs. He was in Pawtucket before he signed that huge deal with the Dodgers and really came out of nowhere in the later parts of his 30s. But I think for Pirates fans, I'd be very happy with the mentor and the veteran guys that they were able to get this offseason to ultimately help those different pitchers develop throughout this next season.
Yes, and you also have Austin Hedges behind the dish too, who's arguably the best defensive catcher in baseball. So I mean, that's a really nice 1-2 punch, especially in the pitching department, which for all intents and purposes, Jake, you called it a weakness earlier, and I mean, arguably that was the most consistent thing I saw this weekend. So, yeah, again, it's the first weekend of baseball. There's so much to watch still, but we'll see what happens. I truly don't know what's going to happen because I'm probably going to see 8 to 9 different starting pitchers this year. So who really knows?
And I feel like the reason why, at least I believe this for the Red Sox, just because of where their rotation is with all the different injuries, and you got Cutter Crawford being thrown into the rotation, Tanner Houck, who struggled all throughout spring and has struggled as a starter, since coming up through the majors, getting thrown into the rotation. And I feel like for the Pirates, with a lot of the young guys, I mean, you've seen it not only just specifically with the team of the Pirates, but the Orioles, they had a lot of tough times developing pitchers and getting them into what they were. Dean Kramer's a guy who comes to mind immediately, and it's really turned into a great starting pitcher for the O's. But I bet you're hoping that's the same thing for the Pirates, and I'm obviously very curious to see how those ultimate pitchers end up matching up against the guys that the Red Sox have going on the bump. But we're going to look more into those matchups over this 3-game series after I tell you about Built Bar. So Built's March Madness bracket is here, and we know that you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's your time to make it count. So go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorite. I don't know about you, Ethan, but mine is the marshmallow puff. When they ended up sending it to my house, it was honestly something that I tried each and every single day to not only fill myself up, but whether I was coming back from the gym, whether I came home from a long work day, it always filled me up. And the best thing about Built Bars is obviously it's got 100% real chocolate, as well as it tastes like a candy bar, but it's actually good for you. And with the March Madness bracket that you can do with different Built Bars or puffs, you can vote for your favorite bar or puff and be entered into a drawing with 50 lucky Locked On listeners and get a free box of Built. And you will also get a chance for a 12-month subscription to Built, and they will actually send it directly to your door. So make sure to go over and check out the Built March Madness bracket. That's at builtmarchmadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff. And make sure to pick up a box while you're there as well. You can vote every day in March, so hop on and support your pick. And the one thing that I think most fans going into this series are going to look towards is what are these pitching matchups really going to dictate sort of the outcome of these games. Both teams, I believe, have great offenses and the ability to overcome a really bad start. Obviously, we saw the Red Sox did that 2 days ago with Chris Sale allowing 7 earned runs and were ultimately able to come back. But for you, with Carter Crawford for the Red Sox, I'm going to try to say his name the best I can, but Johan Oviedo? Oviedo.
Yes.
How do you feel about that matchup?
I mean, it's a matchup, I believe. How old is Cutter Crawford?
I think he's around 26.
27, 26. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, Oviedo is a guy that, due to an injury to JT Brubaker, who's now on the 60-day IL that was announced yesterday, that Johan Oviedo was going to probably be that long relief guy for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He is, by trade, a starter, but obviously with Rich Hill and Vince Velasquez taking up some spots, and you were hoping JT Brubaker taking up a spot, he was going to get pushed to the bullpen because he had a very strong spring. Now he's starting. He was picked up in the Jose Quintana trade last year from St. Louis. He's done pretty well for himself. I think that he has potential to eventually be somebody that could be in the back end of the rotation, or he could at worst be a long relief arm, which is something right now the Pirates don't have access to. So Oviedo, I think he'll do fine. I wouldn't expect him to do anything that's going to flash the pan. Like, he's not going to strike out like 10 guys. I don't think that's something that he'll do. But most of what I expect from this Pirates pitching staff this year, especially with the rotation, just keep the Pirates in games. I mean, they did it on Sunday against the Reds and lost 3-1 because the offense just couldn't find their legs at all. But, I mean, if you're going to ask this pitching staff to have 3-run games, game in and game out, Pirates aren't going to lose too many games because this offense is going to wake up eventually. And they have the pieces to wake up eventually. And I think that's something I could say about Contreras and Keller as well, which is the other two pitchers for the Pirates this week in this series. Those guys are going to give you 5 innings, hopefully, and give you 3 or 4 earned run games and keep you in games. That's ultimately what the goal is, because the bullpen, not that great, but also it had a pretty good weekend to start off. Maybe they use some of that to go into this series as well.
I think I could say the same exact thing about the three starters for the Red Sox in this series, and that's why I think it's going to be so competitive. I mean, Cutter Crawford allowed 5 earned runs over 7 hits through 4 innings in his last spring start, uh, just last week or so, and he's somebody that really struggled when he did get the opportunity to start last season. Had some stretches where he looked really good, but that's sort of semi what you expect from a rookie, sort of just getting thrown right into a starting role and not really being able to build up or sort of develop as that starting pitcher against major league competition. I feel like, for Crawford, you could either see him go out there, in my mind, allow 2 earned runs, maybe strike out 5 to 6, or he could do similar what he did in that spring training start against the Braves, which we saw a lot last season, is allow 4 to 5 runs, and the offense sort of has to pick him up. And then Nick Pivetta, he's sort of exactly what you're sort of going to get. You already know. He's very similar. He's either going to give you a 2-run outing where he strikes out 8, or he's going to allow 5 earned runs out of nowhere, and really struggle throughout spring training as well. Hoping he's able to find his sort of sequences and have a little bit better command from what we saw in spring training. And then Corey Kluber ended up allowing, as I already mentioned, 4 runs over 6 hits with 4 walks against Baltimore in opening day. And so I think for both of these pitching staffs, sort of from what I hear from you, we're probably going to see a pretty high scoring 3 games.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that I would expect, but then the Pirates always come out and I say, "Oh man, yeah, they'll score a lot of runs," and then every game will be 5-3 or 3-2. So I mean, I would expect a lot of runs just because I mean, look at some of the names that you got in this series, dude. You got O'Neill Cruz, Brian Reynolds, Carlos Santana, Andrew McCutchen on your side, Masataka Yoshida, Adam Duvall, Rafi Devers, Enrique Hernandez. Sorry, I was almost going to say Christian Hernandez. I'm just thinking of all the guys that I know from the Red Sox, because obviously, as a National League team that doesn't see you guys that much, I don't get to talk to you guys that much, so I don't get to see it. But I mean, you got Verdugo, you got Justin Turner, Arroyo. There's a lot to like about your lineup, man. And then on the Pirate side, Sawinski, Cannon Smith-Njigba, Connor Joe, G1 Bay. There's a lot of different offensive firepower that could come out alive in the series. And also, it's Fenway Park.
Right.
It's a hitter-friendly ballpark from what I always remember. And 2 of these games are at night, and one of them is right in the afternoon on Wednesday. So, yeah, it could be a really fun series, dude. I think it has a lot of potential, and I think it'd also be really fun for the big names to just come out and have a really big, fun series for us, at least on my side, because my first series was kind of boring. Your first series had, like, everything imaginable that you could possibly think of.
Yeah, it was up and down emotions, but definitely how I would have liked the Red Sox to start, obviously, the 2023 season. And I think as well, something that you brought up and we've talked about throughout this conversation is sort of the inexperience that both teams have against each other. And I think that's one thing, at least on the Red Sox pitching side, where they have, a veteran in Corey Kluber, a relative veteran in, Nick Pivetta, and a guy in Cutter Crawford who's only in his second year, who could, really be hurt sort of by that inexperience and sort of shocked at some of the ways that the Pirates might be able to take advantage of different pitches. And, we've already talked about the dimensions at Fenway Park, but sometimes, it's easy to look at the paper of the lineup and be like, yeah, I mean, these guys aren't huge names. So what are they going to be able to do against, the
Mm-hmm.
pitchers that the Red Sox are putting out there? But, especially, when these guys don't know how to attack them or haven't had really any experience against these different guys in the Pirates lineup, I think that we could see a game where the Pirates lineup shocks, one of these pitchers out of nowhere. And, at least for, Red Sox fans, they're like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah, and that's where I feel too. Is I mean, I'm just happy baseball's back, Jake.
Me too.
Honestly, it's very nice now that as podcast host here for you guys, Locked on Red Sox, for me, Locked on Pirates, we're talking about baseball now. We're not talking about contract stuff. We're not talking about
Thank God.
who are they going to sign in free agency, who's going to make it out of spring. Well, guess what? We know that now. There's 26 guys traveling everywhere. The Red Sox, you guys, of course, get to stay home. We got to come to you guys. Our home opener is not until Friday for my beloved Andrew McCutchen at 4:12 Eastern Time, which I was really hoping, by the way, this is completely off topic. I was really hoping that they were going to somehow flex it to where the Pirates are going to get to open their season on April 12th because the area code of Pittsburgh is 4:12, and we always play that opening day game on 4:12. So 4:12 on 4:12 with Kutch coming back would have been nice, but it's okay. I'll take this Friday.
I was so happy that he ended up coming back as just an overall baseball fan. And I connect with exactly what you said. And that's one thing that, I said to Lauren going through like the last few weeks of spring training is I'm just done trying to overanalyze and guess what's going to ultimately happen in the regular season because at least for the Red Sox, it's just been such a long and up and down off season. Obviously with everything that occurred, but just with like all the doubts and all the question marks and the what ifs. And I bet it's similar for the Pirates as well. And you're just itching to know, I bet even for these prospects, as a Red Sox fan, with Cassis and Bayo, how are these guys going to ultimately play, whether it's in their rookie season or in their second year? And I think that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it a lot of fun to, talk about some of our favorite teams. But, really looking at this 3-game series, I wanted to give each of us the opportunity to sort of guess how this series will ultimately play out. I think, obviously each of us are probably going to be a little bit biased, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a very similar outcome as we saw the Red Sox and Orioles series, where the Red Sox come away with a 2-1 series win.
You wouldn't be surprised with me probably that much. I thought I can't spring a surprise, Jake, because my first episode today over at Locked On Pirates, I already have my prediction out with the Pirates going 3-3 on the week, losing the series to Boston, but winning one game, and then winning the series against the White Sox later this week. So I agree with you. I think the Pirates are going to struggle a little bit with Fenway because of the inexperience of the ballpark. I think the team is still getting under their legs a little bit. Rowanty Contreras, as mentioned earlier, World Baseball Classic guy. I think he's still kind of in that weird spot. We'll see how he pops up. It's going to be a fun series, nevertheless, though. I just want to see these guys get things rolling, and then as the season progresses, just get better.
So, last question for you. With that one win, I'm curious to hear which game you think the Pirates are going to get that one win against, and against which pitcher. So obviously, it's Oviedo versus Crawford, Contreras versus Pivetta, and then Game 3, Keller versus Kluber.
I'd either the first or the third game. I think it's either go out and you want to win that first game in Boston because you just lost
Right.
2 of 3 to Cincinnati, or let's not get swept by Boston and start the season 1-5.
Yeah.
I think that's where that is. I think now what I will say, I don't think any Pirates starter this series will have a result, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I think the games will be close enough to when they leave the game that the Pirates can either sway it either way, or they just won't pitch as many innings to have the result anyways. And I could
I,
see that on the Red Sox side too.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with you, just because Kluber only pitched 4 2/3 on opening day. Pivetta went 6 innings. His last spring training started, and we know that he can go the distance. And then Crawford, he's a guy who goes 4 to 5 innings. But for me, I could really see the Pirates winning any of these 3 games. Just with how I know with Crawford and Pivetta, their first 2 starts or their first start of the season, and with sort of how Nick Pivetta has pitched since he's joined the Red Sox, you just already, like I said, know what you're going to get. Crawford, sometimes, he shoves. Sometimes, he'll allow some of those, bigger run games, 4 or 5 runs. And then Kluber, I think if the Pirates are able to sort of study what the Orioles did to him on opening day, and if Kluber's not able to figure out his command, I think that, the Sox could ultimately lose that one. But I'm super excited to see how it obviously all plays out. But for people who want to check out your Twitter, because I know you do similar stuff that we do over on Twitter at LO_Red Sox, to be able to keep fans updated. If people want to and are interested to stay up to date with what's happening with Locked On Pirates, where can they go and check that stuff out?
You can check me out at MVP underscore Ethan. It's like capitalized under capital, that whole thing. But MVP underscore Ethan, I'll pop up as Ethan Smith. It's actually funny. My profile picture on my personal Twitter is me drinking a beer when I was 3 with my grandfather. So it'll be very recognizable. Or if you want to follow the show page at Locked On Pirates, of course, it's everywhere where you find Jake and Lauren at Locked On Red Sox, YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm here. Just if you want, just hit the subscribe button. You don't have to watch me. I understand. Watch the Red Sox. I get it. It's fine. You don't have to watch me. It's all good.
And then if you're listening on Locked On Pirates, you can follow myself at Jake Giggy, and then my co-host Lauren, who wasn't unfortunately able to make it, but Lauren and I do episodes 5 times a week, just like Ethan does. You can follow her at La La La. I usually get this right, but sometimes I get stumbled by it. It's La 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 Lauren, 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. She's gonna be so disappointed with me that I messed it
She's
up
gonna
after not
listen to
doing
this.
it for like
She's
a
gonna
year.
listen to this, and she's gonna be like, "Man, come on."
That's so funny. But whichever show that you're listening to, we greatly appreciate you making Locked On Pirates and Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen and check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. I don't know about you, Ethan, but I am trying to win my league for fantasy baseball. Just did my draft last week. Already starting to get some great results. But if you're looking to continue to learn about what's on the waiver wire, which guys can I get from free agency, make sure to check out Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy strategies, and find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and over on YouTube. And I don't know about you, Ethan, but we always end our show. I say, let's go Sox. I'll also add the Pirates in there too. Let's go Pirates. Really appreciate you coming on, man.
Of course.